Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Funke Afolabi-Brown, the founder of Restful Sleep MD and the Restful Sleep Place. Really, our mission is to help families, especially children and their busy parents, change their relationship with sleep so that they can thrive and reach their fullest potential. And I have a phenomenal human being here today who is now my friend and is a TEDx speaker, really known for so much of her work in the space of play therapy, which I'm learning so much, and I think you're all gonna understand why I'm so giddy with excitement in a little bit. So I have Tammi Van Hollander here, and so Tammi, I want you to introduce yourself because I always say like I don't do it justice. And, I don't want to miss any of the accolades that you deserve. So maybe just introduce yourself to our friends.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much for being here. When I connected with you, I was so excited to be able to have you as a resource. So I'm just thrilled to be here and to have met you. So, so I have a private practice in Philadelphia.
Thank you so much for being here. When I connected with you.
That's okay. I heard myself twice. So I'm a registered play therapy supervisor, and I have a group in Philadelphia. And first, I've been doing this for almost 25 years as a play therapist and believe so much in the expressive arts and tried to get more play therapists within my practice. And I just couldn't find enough of them. So now we have a play therapist, we have 3 dance and movement therapists, and 2 art therapists, and a music therapist, and all of us just embracing the expressive therapies. I mean, play therapy, Santre therapy has been my passion. I travel all over the country and the world just promoting this work because I believe it is such an important resource. And play therapy is often, sometimes pushed under the rug, and some of these other larger modalities, we're shining the light on, where we forget about the importance of play and the importance of connection. One of my specialties is young children and early childhood, but really I work with all ages. And when I found you, right, as we know, with so many ages and so many parents coming to me regarding sleep and so much anxiety and so many pieces around sleep, and we have exhausted parents, we have exhausted children. And I know this is now, I feel like I'm interviewing you, but this piece of it, when we have parents that are so tired and kids that are so tired, we can't not expect for that to affect their behaviors in such significant ways. And it's just this vicious cycle until they can all settle down. And we have anxious parents and anxious kids. So it often goes together.
Yes. Oh, that is so good. And I think this is definitely work that I feel like it beautifully blends into, the nighttime anxiety that a lot of kids have. But even to start, maybe just to give some of our listeners who maybe don't really know that much about play therapy. People think therapy, you sit in front of someone and you talk. But then you're wondering, how does that work for a 4-year-old or, and so it's just beautiful to help people realize that there are ways to express those feelings beyond just talk, whatever modality of talk therapy that is. So how does, play therapy really then address those, especially children that have more sort of vulnerable nervous systems, let's put it like that. Like, how do you see that interplay? That's one. And I also want you to humble brag a bit on your very recent TEDx talk too, just kind of closing that loop with where I know you just mentioned in passing, I travel all around the world talking about this. So let's just loop that in a little bit.
Okay, we can loop that in a little bit. But I think, in terms of when we're looking at play therapy and working with children, that play is the child's natural language, and the toys are their words. And so much anxiety and is in the child's body. So when we're looking at this and we're looking at this brain-based work and how children really are able to self-regulate, right? It's first really looking at, I think we when we once met before, I talked about Bruce Perry and how he talks about this bottom up approach. And in
Mhm.
play therapy, we very much do this bottom up approach where we're first really working with the body and their little nervous systems. And how are we first working with their nervous systems? And then we're in relationship. And then they're able to reason. So to have a kid, even with a child who is highly anxious at night and maybe in the midst of a panic attack, to try to rationalize with their left brain, oh, you don't have to worry. There's no such thing as monsters. You need to get in bed now. Like all these rational pieces just throws them more into this fight or flight and
Mhm.
not feeling heard. Dan Siegel, who I love, will often just say how important it is that we need to connect and then redirect. And we know what helps children to self-regulate is connection and our own presence. So how can we create this bridge of safety and then still be able to have the parent leave? And I think there's a lot of different ways that we can do that. And what's so great about play therapy, which will bring me into the TEDx talk, because the TEDx talk is on sand tray therapy, which is my passion. And sand tray therapy, there are many different toys, these little tiny miniatures. You can link to the TEDx talk to watch it. And basically, it is the child's expression. So by placing these miniatures in the sand tray, we are really connecting with their conscious and unconscious world. And it's pretty amazing. I taught a sand tray class in China at 10 o'clock in the evening. And I inform them by doing sand trays at night that their dreams may be a little bit wackier because we're just tapping so much deeper into the unconscious. We don't really know what we're going to do when we start picking these different miniatures and we place them in the sand and they begin to build a connection. And what will often happen in terms of with kids who are having nightmares or are having difficulty dreaming, when they're able to create, whether they're these calm spaces or these safe spaces within the sand, they can navigate it. They can take these monsters and they can trap them, and they could use resources and they can use obstacles that are going to be able to empower them, because it's a full physical experience. It's the doing, and it's a whole brain experience to this type of work. I mean, we know in terms of, so one of my favorite interventions, though, I mean, I have a whole list in terms of ones for kids. My one A very special mentor of mine, David Crenshaw, who in the play therapy world, he is just this guru. He has been doing this forever, and he it's called Monsters, and is it Monsters with Party Hats? And when we think of kids who are having nightmares, that they are so stuck. And if we ask them to draw their nightmares, it's never as scary, right, as the real nightmare. Or kids who may see a TV show, right, or a movie, and they perseverate on it and they go to sleep at night and they see the picture of it. So what we do is we just make it as funny and silly as possible and as outlandish as possible. And when we can be playful and when we can have fun with these things that can create anxiety and fear, it quiets their whole nervous system. Like, that's counter conditioning fears. We take things that are really scary and then we add the beauty of play and the safety of play and the safety of relationship to help quiet that whole nervous system. So, I think that that is one. And many kids will just, so many times at night, at night is when it's quiet. I mean, all this. And when we lay down at night and you're busy all day, it's when all the anxiety just escalates. And I believe that there are more people in this world right now with anxiety than not. I need my sensory blanket at night. I need the darkness at night. So, really being able to recognize what are the things your child needs at night, and to first get them grounded in their bodies, and even bringing in some of the senses, right? Of whether they need that heavy blanket. Do they want it dark? Do they need a little nightlight? Maybe there's certain smells that feel good. So different ways that we're grounding in the senses to create that safety first, which I think is really important. And that becomes part of a consistent routine for the children.
I just love, I love that so much. And one of the things you had mentioned is the experiences these children have around, nighttime anxiety and the nighttime fears are real. And sometimes parents feel they're just at a loss. Everybody's tired, so they're frustrated. Mom might already be, kind of living on the edge with all her own stress and anxiety, or, both parents, right? Or they've had a long day at work, and now this child is running back and forth talking about, a monster under the bed, or, nightmares, or waking up frequently with those nightmares. And so I just really love how this is an incredible tool we can use. I mean, within the sleep community, one of the treatments we recommend is re re oh my gosh, I'm blanking on the word, image rehearsal, right? Image rehearsal therapy, right? So this is something that I just love this, because typically my model, usually my framework is, having the family sort of draw maybe those monsters and kind of come up with a more, palatable ending to that nightmare, right? So constantly reinforcing that before they go to sleep. But this is tangible with play therapy, with sound therapy. They're touching, different structures, right? This, they can feel it, they can come up with those stories. I wanted to find out, I know we talked about nightmares, we talked about nighttime anxiety. Like, where have you really seen this most effective, especially when it's related to sleep in kids?
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
one versus the other,
I
or
think we
something else?
also we have to really have empower kids, right? And
Mm,
raise these like I can kids rather than these power struggles. I think one, we have to look at that, although parents may have their own anxiety about separating
yeah,
and want their
yeah.
kids near them. So I think that's a piece that as parents need to check in with themselves in terms
Mm,
of that piece, and how are we giving kids some of their own resilience. For example, like I'll have kids make a worry spray, and they'll title it whatever they want, and we may put lavender or frankincense or whatever we need to. And when they're spraying, so we're not saying monsters are real, but the smell and the breathing, and that when they're able to breathe, they're able to quiet their little nervous systems. And with it, they may create a song, right? They may
mm,
create a little ritual where they're able to spray it, where they're able to even spray it and then be the bridge for their parents. The kids really do well in terms of if they create a picture, and this could even be in the sand tray and we take a picture of it, or that they'll draw a picture and the parent, mom may put a little perfume on it or kiss it with lipstick, and they put it under their pillow. And
mm,
just this idea, I mean, part of the anxiety is, right, this aloneness and
mm.
being alone and this fear of being alone. So if we have transitional objects, or that we know that I can smell mom's scent, or under the pillow, I have these things that I want to be able to dream about, just creates more of these pieces that they drew it, that they put it under their bed, and that it's just a way to be able to help them. Another one that I really like, it's funny, I think it was a parent's friend, this book that it was called, I'm going to get it wrong, I think Playfully Colorful Bedtime. Darlene Liss
Mm,
was the author. And
mm,
um, I love it. So what we'll do is we'll make a rainbow in, which is, kids love to make rainbows. And
mhm.
then they'll put it by their bed. And it's similar to counting sheep. So to keep your mind busy instead of all the anxiety thoughts, we would start with red. and they think of everything they could think that's red. And they go and from the roses to the fire truck, and then they go to orange and everything they could think with that's orange. And often as they're going through this, it's so exhausting that many times they don't even get to the end because they're thinking of it and then they're falling asleep. I mean, we're trying to distract them. And there are many podcasts and many different, you know, podcasts and guided imagery and things that will really take certain kids on these adventures who love them. And I actually meant to try to look up, because there was one particular one that I could not remember the name. If I remember it, I will send it to you, that so
Yeah.
many kids were just loving. But I think it really has to be the buy-in for the kid and
Mm,
what's going to make them feel good and resilient and want to sleep in their bed. Right? Like, who really
mhm.
wants to sleep in your bed? It's kind of like, who wants to brush your teeth? And
Yeah.
how are they making it fun? And how are they creating this space that is theirs and it feels good, and that they're so proud of themselves for doing it,
Mhm, mhm,
rather than it being the parents' agenda? How do we help to make it their agenda and know that, like, this is good for them and this is healthy for them and this is them being independent and growing up and doing big kid things? And
yeah.
so that's, I think, that piece of it, that when we get that buy-in and that it's not so adult directed,
Mhm,
is a big piece. And I think another part is, I think I mentioned to you, of them creating these spaces of what they may want to dream about or what these safe spaces are for them. You know, I often, when I say safe spaces, when I teach and talk about trauma work, I'm very cautious, because for kids
mhm,
who've experienced trauma, there isn't a safe place, and a
yeah.
little lavender spray is not going to work. So I want to put
Mhm,
out there that we're not talking about trauma kids right now when we're talking about these pieces. But I use virtual reality, that I was trained with Dr. Jessica Stone. So kids will go in and be completely immersed in these amazing nature places, and they can add trees, they could be on the beach, and they'll lay there with the sounds and they'll be completely submersed. And then we take a picture of it. And then they're able to go back and go through that guided imagery. And with that, I work really hard. If they're creating these fantasy places, what does it smell like? What does it look like? What does it feel like to touch? So we can create these senses to encompass, right, their whole body, to just be able to settle them down.
mm, that is so good. So I'm hearing a lot on that really being a buy-in for the child, because sometimes with the strategies that are out there, a lot of them are solely dependent on the parents, right? Who are already tired. And so now empowering the child to say, I can do this and I have the tools to be able to achieve this, where I can navigate some of the fears with tools that can help them to sleep. I think my next question is, because this is what my practice is like. And
Mhm.
again, there's so many tools out there. There's reward systems that people try to implement, and there's camping out methods where the family stays in the bedroom and slowly work their way out. There different sort of modifications of all of this. But in terms of, just from your experience, what would you say for that parent who is like, you know what, I want to help this my child with their, sleep related anxiety and things. What would you say are like your top five tools? I mean, one of the things I want to just make sure we establish, even from this off the bat, is yes, absolutely have a routine, a bedtime routine. If you don't have one, making sure that they are, not on devices, and especially consuming content that's too activating, and things like that. But what would you say would be some of the strategies that you would recommend that would help such families?
Right. Okay, I'm going to backtrack for a second before answering that question, because I think what is more important than
Mm,
the tools, and I say this with all my clients with any of these behaviors, is the why.
mm,
It's the
yeah.
why It's not that, oh, my kid has difficulty sleeping. It's the why. They're having difficulty sleeping is just a clue to another behavior of what's
Yeah.
going on. So we
Mm-hmm.
have to get to the roots of what's happening and why this anxiety is coming up at night, and
Mm-hmm.
really understand every behavior has a meaning. And
Yeah.
what are our children trying to communicate to us with these type of behaviors? And I think that that is so much more important. We can give all the tools and
Mm-hmm.
all these different coping skills, but if we don't understand the why and dig deeper in terms of what's going on underneath, none of the coping skills are going to work. And when I hear about coping skills, I often, and since I'm not a big behavioralist, like certain behaviors do work because these kids don't have the tools. But like, for example, you mentioned these kids who have vulnerable nervous systems, right? And that it's so hard for them to settle down and they're so antsy, right? So we're looking at the sensory tools. We're looking at the sensory pieces. So there's so many things that when we know the whys, it's really stuff that we need to, what parents have to implement just to do, right? Like a tool for me would be, for a child would be that sensory blanket,
Mm-hmm.
right? So of those type of things. So it's very tangible, very physical things of what does the child need? What is the anxiety coming from? What
Yeah.
are the fears? Like there are so many times where a child will hear just something that a parent said at a teacher said at school, a child said at school, something on the news. I mean, we are in such a state of so much anxiety in this world. Kids take in so much energy. I'm trained in something called the nurtured heart approach. And Howard Glasser talks about, he says, children read energy like it's braille.
Mm-hmm.
Kids are taking in everything. So it's this idea like, what do we expect from children in this high anxiety world where there is nothing that seems predictable? Everything single
Yeah.
day is different. Kids are not even feeling safe at school. Some kids aren't
Yeah.
feeling safe at home. The
Yeah.
divorce rates are skyrocketing. There are so many different pieces. And I think it's about how are we getting these kids to be able to feel connected,
Mm-hmm.
feel heard, be in relationship where they are feeling safe to first feel grounded enough to take in any of those tools. So I know, the tools. So that's where I go,
Oh, that
that's
is
where I go. And I can give you a
that is
list of tools,
good.
but I will often say it's not about the tools. It's
Mm-hmm.
about that understanding and that connection, and parents having, I guess what I will say, I don't know if it's really a coping tool, but it's advice that I often give, is this idea that parents may be working all day, and that the special remedy for so much for kids is special playtime with their parents, of having it scheduled, and the phone is off, the TV is off, and it's a time when the child gets to decide what they're doing and they're playing it out, and the parent is a part of it and they're witness to it. Often when parents have such busy schedules, the only time that they have with their child, is at night.
Yeah.
And reading a book is beautiful and it's wonderful. And it's a time when a child may come and talk to you about a lot of things, but it's also a time when anxieties come and children will flood every night, and the parent will hold it and the anxiety gets worse rather
Mm-hmm.
than better. So we set aside different time, even different time for cuddling and reading books, and different time for playtime. And that when it comes to bedtime, and the time in the bed is for sleep,
Yeah.
and the playtime is separate. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not as confusing to be able to just separate that and to be able to clear the space, that this is your special sacred space, right? To be able to sleep, to be able to get cozy, and
Yeah.
time for talking, and the anxiety flooding could be, there's always a time for it, and it needs to be heard. But sometimes it's it's the only time that the parent and the child have. And that's
Mm,
why it happens. And never dismiss it because it's important. But if you can find other times when it's not during bedtime, it could be much easier because the anxiety gets higher, the need to hold on to the parents gets higher, and it's just this push pull
mm.
rather than just a time when it is more for sleep and that they're feeling safer in relationship to be able to leave their parents for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that I've also incorporated as part of my strategies, especially around these kids who may have the tendency to hold on to a lot when it comes to sort of maybe experiences they've had during the day, and then they worry, right? They are the warriors. They're really good at that. And you're right, the bedtime now becomes very distressing for them because they have all these cares they've been holding on to and want to tell the parents, and it's really creating this spiral. And I'm sure you probably use this as a tool as well. It's really setting, like you said, setting aside that time to worry, or setting a time, that space, even to write those things down. So sometimes I'll have families set up a kind of like a worry jar, so the kids
Mhm.
can just like worry away, not close to bedtime, like you said, because then the emotions around what they're worrying about just seem to be more intense. And then, you know, even if they now bring it up at bedtime, then we're not replacing that time for cuddling and just really enjoying that time together. We're not replacing it with trying to process those thoughts. We can say, oh, yeah, we have this set time during the day when we do that. We're done worrying for the day. We're going to leave it till tomorrow. And I use that even for adults that I work with as well. Because I think I love what you're saying about really dealing with the root cause. Because poor sleep, whatever ramification of poor sleep it is, whether it's difficulties with falling asleep or staying asleep or waking up early, or you're waking up and you're still exhausted, it's a symptom of
Yeah.
something deeper. And really, this is why we don't treat insomnia with sleep hygiene, or you know what I mean. Like, you really
Right.
want to delve into where is this coming from? What is this trying to say? What is my body or my mind trying to tell me? And I just like how you really focus on that, because on the long term, that's really what's going to give us the lasting impact that we need.
Yeah, there's a beautiful book called I Love You Rituals by Becky Bailey. And just being able to do, these things that are just, building their confidence and building their
Mm.
connection. The worry jar, what we'll often do is we have 3 worry jars. So one
Wow.
worry jar is you put them all in, and then the other two jars are worries that came true and worries that
Mm.
did not come true. So in the morning, they could
Mm.
put all their worries in the jar, and at the end of the day, so what normally happens, right? For the majority of the time, the worries that didn't come true
It's,
are filled, and the worries that did come
yeah,
true are not. But if they
yeah,
did come true, right? So if they did, well, it came true, but look, you're still here. You
yeah,
survived it. You
yeah.
learned from that worry, and
Mm.
it made you more resilient. You learned
Mm.
how to problem solve it. You know what to expect next time if this happens,
Mm.
and we'll often rate the worries, right? Of
Mm.
of how big are they, and that part of it. In my sand trays, we'll do a worry brain trap. So, and then being able to boss them back and to be able to trap those worries, and by the miniatures, by being able to navigate them and literally just trap them and bury them in the sand. It's just that physical experience that feels
Mm.
so empowering that you're able
Mhm.
to just do that. Like, who
Yeah.
doesn't want to just take time to just take all those worries and dump them in the sand
Mhm.
and just bury things, and just sometimes we just need to make that mess, and then in sand tray then we can begin to organize it. And it's sand tray can be a representation of what's going on in our brain. So it could just look like a mess, and then we can begin to compartmentalize and add
Mhm.
fences and take the things out that we don't need to, and we're literally organizing our brain. And it's like,
Mhm.
whoa. And it's just so amazing. And that's, from that, or just children within their play, being able to just play out these pieces that go so deep in their unconscious that they don't have the words for, but they're
Yeah.
playing it out. And it's that full sensory experience where we're able to see that shift.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, this has been so good, so enlightening. I mean, we've talked about a lot of things, but I believe that the takeaway is really focusing on empowering the child. Even when it feels exhausting, when we want a quick fix, really trying to figure out the why. Where is this coming from? What is this a symptom of? And really addressing it. And realizing that through play therapy, we really can have, these kids give expression to what they're feeling on the inside. And I love the analogy of the three worry jars, and then the likelihood, ranking it to say what is the likelihood, or how high on the scale is it, and then what's the likelihood of it happening, and then looking back to reflect, right? You circle back to say, okay, I had this incredible worry, I was really really scared by it, but it didn't come true. So next time, it's empowering to say, okay, this is a thought. All right, I'm going to write it down. The likelihood of it coming to pass is lower. So this has been really phenomenal. But then, can you just tell our listeners where we can find you, where we can learn more about, play therapy and the work that you do?
Right. Well, to learn even more about play therapy, you could check out the Association for Play Therapy. But my website, Mainline Play Therapy, and I have Tammi Van Hollander Instagram, and I have a YouTube channel where I am always posting a lot of things. And I have my Facebook page. I mean, I am so, as you know, so passionate about this work. And I think, I don't want to end with the piece that you said in terms of my heart goes out to all parents. I mean, I was a mom that literally got in the crib with my kid as a baby, and just how it is exhausting and it is so hard. And that when just having parents be able to have their own self-care and their own resets, and being able to do what they need to do for themselves, because if they can't reset and have their own self-awareness, it makes it so hard for the children. And it's just a vicious cycle that it's the oxygen mask, right? The parents have to put on the oxygen mask first and take care of themselves with all these different stressors, because being tired and then having power struggles with your child is incredibly hard. And how are we trying to do it in a way that doesn't feel so challenging, and that everybody's on the same team rather than these intense power struggles?
Yeah, yeah. No, this is so good. So I put that there. What I'm going to also do is I'm going to put the link to the YouTube, to your YouTube, I'm sorry, to your YouTube channel, as well as the TEDx talk. I
Okay.
think that is just exciting. So I'm going to put that in the comments as well, so folks can go watch it. I thought it was really powerful, very thought provoking, and really enlightening, even for me, because this is something that I'm really coming to understand. I'm just really fascinated by. This has been incredible. It's been fun hanging out with you all today. So, this is an episode you probably want to watch again. And definitely, please take advantage of all the resources that Tammi has. And if you have a child or a young adult that's struggling with sleep issues at this point, definitely schedule an appointment with us at the restfulsleepplace.com. This is where we provide really not just resources, but really get to the bottom of why are we struggling as a family, right, with sleep. And so we're able to help you go from exhausted and fighting those bedtime battles to really thriving as a family and well rested. So really good seeing and spending time with you all. Until next time, I hope you rest well. Bye
Thank
everyone,
you.
and thanks again, Tammi.
Thank you.